Welcome back to the program. The Managing Director of Afrinvest Limited, Ike Chioke, is still here with me on the show. And just to quickly correct that, he's got over 24 years in investment banking. Mr. Chioke, thank you so much for sticking around with on the final lap of the program. Now, we're still talking about following the money.
Correct.
Let's quickly talk to us about the business investment banking in Nigeria as a whole.
I think we have a great industry in investment banking.
Even though it's not really appreciated.
It is not well appreciated, but increasingly so. It is coming of age. I think people in the financial services sector, the banks, commercial banks, insurance companies, are well aware of the services of investment banking. I think some of the new emerging entrants in the power sector will become aware of investment banking. By the time they digest the acquisitions and then begin to look for new capital to actually grow these distribution companies and renting companies, they have no choice but to look for investment bankers. The oil and gas sector has of late begun to notice investment bankers. That was helped with the local content bill. Without the local content bill, oil and gas was really a sort of what I call an island industry of foreign IOCs who, if they needed anything from Nigeria, they called, the international commercial banks or investment banks come and help them, and everything was ring-fenced offshore of Nigeria. But with the involvement of local content players, the likes of Seplat, for instance, Adax Petroleum, Oando, so you begin to see Nigerian owners who now understand some of the issues they need to resolve, both financially with Naira as well as internationally when you're dealing with other currencies. But we don't have enough. Oh, sorry, I could also go for that. Many state bonds have been issued by investment banks, so a lot of states, Lagos State is a good one. Kogi State had just completed a 3 billion naira transaction 2 weeks ago, and so on and so forth. Many states are very familiar with investment banks when it comes to domestic capital raising. But there are a lot of government agencies, a lot of government departments that could benefit with some ideas from investment banking in terms of how they run various, particularly large infrastructure projects. That's something that they need to, I think, we could probably do more work in educating the federal government and some of the states, because some people just don't know that we exist. They think banks are the ones that have big signboards outside on the street advertising their offices, because most investment banks don't even have a notice outside on where they are located to tell you that there's an investment bank in that location.
But then, Mr. Chioke, you know that, well, I don't know if it's a popular saying anyway, that your work always speaks for you. So in your line of business, how has it contributed to, business combination, in the Nigerian market, for instance, talking about mergers, acquisitions, takeovers? You mentioned a little bit of it, but let's talk about it.
Oh, we've done, just this year, we've helped a leading insurance company acquire a pension fund administrator. This insurance company is one of the top 3 in the country and has no foot leg in the pension industry, and we've helped them acquire a 60% controlling stake in that area, because the pension industry is a large and growing one. Last year, I can't give you the names because it's not publicized, but last year we helped assisted AMCON on the sale of Main Street Bank Limited. That's a 126 billion naira transaction. Afrinvest advised AMCON together with Barclays Capital. Barclays, again, this is a partnership between a domestic investment bank and an international investment bank. We were able to realize a whopping 126 billion for AMCON, far in excess of the book value of Main Street, which at the time, even adjusted for provisions, was only 78 billion. We've also sold various strategic stakes to investors. When GT Bank divested its non-banking assets, GT Assurance, which became Mansard, GT Asset Management, GTB Registrars, we were the ones that orchestrated the sale. When UBA decided to reorganize itself from being a bank holding company and spin off all its subsidiaries to the shareholders, including the registrar business, which is now Afriland Registrars, or UBA Capital, which is now spun off as a listed company, we were the ones that orchestrated that. Some of the bigger ones you will know, GT Bank, when they went to the London Stock Exchange in 2008, Afrinvest was a advisor.
So you see, you've advised a whole lot of businesses, whether medium, whether large, and it still seems as if going forward, talking about investment activities and the rest of it, we still do not see so much. I'll still go back to it again. So much confidence, so to speak, especially from the government. And I'll still say it, we're changing guards May 29th, and we need a situation where everybody can hit the ground running. So we're talking about strategies, we're talking about ideas that can be brought to the table that all concerned, whether for the private or the public sector or for investment bankers such as yourself, everybody can flow from the same page.
Absolutely. I think one of the challenges that many people in Nigeria feel about investment banking is that when they think of investment banking, they think about the stock market. And if they think about the stock market and say, oh, the market is down, then they think everybody's down. But the investment banking encompasses not just the stock market or the asset management business, but the advisory side. And they do have different cycles of operation. So advisory could be booming in an environment where the stock market has been going down, which has been the case over the last year and a half. But I think the market is on for a big rebound this year. I mean, on the euphoria of Buhari's win, we've seen a 10% correction in the market that, year to date, its decline is only 3%. 2 weeks ago, it was the worst performing stock market in the entire world. Now by the time Buhari steps in and perhaps builds a cabinet that one can respect and say these are good people, I can even see the market even taking off. And the cabinet, the way they set it up, will be a signal to the market that they are ready to work.
But what kind of reforms are you expecting to see now, the equity and the debt markets going forward?
I think investors are taking a lot of positions. The market has been, quite made more transparent, giving faster access. We have, for instance, an online real-time trading system now available to our clients that if you are on, you could use your iPad and buy and sell positions right from this position here. So there's greater access to the market. A lot of investors can trade in Nigeria from anywhere in the world once they are connected to the internet. So that phenomenon will begin to change the nature of this market, which has been previously dominated by institutional investors. I'm predicting that in the next few years, the market will have influence from retail investors who will be able to buy and sell as they please, as more and more people begin to adopt online trading.
But in the short to medium term now, what kind of reforms are you expecting?
In the capital markets?
Yes. Even at the debt markets too.
I think one of the issues you see with the capital market is that we haven't seen a major initial public offering recently. I think people are still very scared and still remember the shock of 2008, how all their investment earnings just vaporized. I think this year, towards the end of this year, there may be sufficient investor confidence for a big blue chip company to come out and do an IPO on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and do it similar to what Seplat did. But obviously Seplat was a dual listing and had most of the shares sold in London and some of it sold in Nigeria. But I think the market is looking for that sort of stimulus to get it to go further.
Now, what more can be done to, in terms of structured finance for long-term business financing, looking at the enterprise called Nigeria Incorporated?
Structured finance. The areas of focus, I think, will be for this government. Do something in rail. We need it urgently. At least do a triangle. So you have Lagos connected through Abuja to Kado. You have Abuja, Kado, straight down to Port Harcourt. And importantly, you have Port Harcourt through Onitsha, through Benin, back to Lagos. If you do that triangle, you have an efficient way of getting people and goods around. That would be critical. Do something in power. Focus on transmission. We talk a lot about power, forgetting that transmission is the biggest bottleneck. And you can do 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers of high tension, transmission cables across the country and reconnect most of the key cities. Then allows many of the new NIPP plants or the new power plants coming up to have access to evacuation. There's a lot of power stations that are sort of an island on themselves. They could be running and generating 200 megawatts of power and they can't evacuate it onto the grid. So it's a terrible shame to have excess on one side and poverty on the other side because you cannot get it to the system. Again, evacuating the power is important. Transportation and power. Then you can then begin to address some of the key things you want to do about employment generation and economic growth. Because without power, it's very difficult for small-scale businesses to get started. Someone wants to do a hairdresser, they have to buy a small generator on diesel. That's terrible. Or it's without transportation, it's challenging for a large-scale business to grow further. Maybe Volkswagen wants to set up an assembly plant in Makurdi. But how are they going to move all the CKD parts coming in from the sea, from the ports? These are critical areas of intervention. And of course, around that, they shouldn't forget, they run on the mantra of anti-corruption. They must lead by example. And the bane of corruption is such in this country that just seeing that Buhari had won, the black market FX rate corrected itself, went down from about 225 naira 2 weeks ago. It's now hovering at 200 naira, similar as the interbank rate. And that just tells you what can be done. This
conversation is definitely not over, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning on the program.
My pleasure, Harriet.
Ike Chioke, Managing Director at AfriInvest. And that's all we've got time for today on the show. If you missed today's edition of the program, be sure to catch it on youtube.com/channelsweb/businessmorning. I'm Harriet Agbini. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.